All right, everybody. So I'm going to be giving you a quick tutorial today on Excel. So this is sort of if you've never used Excel before, this will give you a quick primer just so you at least know what we're talking about. So I'm going to switch over here to my desktop real quick. Now you should be able to see me down in the bottom corner. What I'm going to do is go ahead and open Microsoft Excel. And it can be found as a green icon. You might be able to find it in your start menu or by typing in the search box Excel. Start Excel. And mine is the version from Office 365, and that's what you would get with your student subscription as well. So what we see here is we get this home page, which gives us some idea if we can give a blank workbook. There's a tour of Welcome to Excel, but generally you're going to start off with a new blank workbook. So we're going to click on that. And what you see is this big page that is kind of blank and looks like it's got sort of a checkerboard all over it. And what I want to do is point out a few things to you. So first of all, we see a bunch of different menus along the top, right? So we have our file menu, our home menu, insert, page layout, etc. But when we click on each of those, what we do is we get what's called a ribbon, and that gives us all of these different options. So under the Home tab, we see a ribbon that has things like copy and paste. It has some formatting of text, some alignment things, numbering, and cell styles, etc. If we go to the Insert tab, we see a bunch of different options as well. So what it's done is it's sort of, they've packed in all of your different options into these different tabs and each of these different ribbons that will come out. So you might want to search around and find some of the things that you're going to need. I would say what you'll probably use mostly are home, maybe insert, formulas, and data maybe. We'll start off on the home tab here. Okay, so the next thing we need to know is that Excel is basically a grid system, and it's composed of columns, A, B, C, D, etc. And you can see that I was just clicking on the letter at the top, and that just highlights the entire column. And it has rows, row 1, 2, 3, etc. And those are labeled along the side here. Now I can click onto an individual cell. So I've got a column and a row, and the cell where those intersect, well, that has a name. So this cell is A1. For example, this cell here, you can see it kind of highlights it there, is H7, right? So what we can do by using that information is we can address cells. We can ask it for what information is in H7 or I2 or J3, right? What I've been doing is just simply clicking on these cells, right? And that's one way to navigate around. You can click on a cell, you can highlight a whole range of cells, you can highlight a whole range in a column, you can highlight a whole range in a row, or a whole range of rows and columns. You can also highlight an entire row just by clicking the end, like I showed you before, or clicking the column header, which is the letter here, D, E, F, G. Okay, the other way you can navigate through these cells is by using arrow keys. So I'm using my up, down, left, and right arrows to go over left and right, and down and up. What you'll also notice if I click back onto A1 is if I hit enter, it moves me down to A2. I can move back up. If I hit tab, it moves me over. So tab moves you to the right. Shift tab will move you to the left if you just want to use your keyboard. Enter will move you down, and Shift Enter will move you up. Or, like I said, you can just click on individual cells. Okay, that's the navigation through them. Now let's think about throwing in some data into the cell. Okay, so let's say we recorded the number of potato chips eaten by 4 different individuals during the Super Bowl. And individual 1 had 12 potato chips. I'm going to hit enter, and that enters that data. And then we say individual 2 had 23 potato chips. We hit enter. All right. And then maybe individual 3 had 78 potato chips. Whoa, I hit 787. I'm going to hit backspace, enter. And say individual 4 had 32 potato chips. Okay, great. So now what we can see is I've got some data in all of those cells. But now let's say I wanted to identify which individual that came from. Well, I could put it in column B, but that makes it a little bit more difficult to understand. So I'm just going to take my data, I'm going to highlight it all, and I'm just going to grab, see how my cursor changes when I get over to the edge of this, and I'm going to grab it and move it over. You can see that? I can grab it, and my cursor changes to a 4-sided arrow, and then I can just move it over. I can move it back. I can move it into a different spot over here. I'm just going to move it back up here where I wanted it. Now I can put individual 1, individual 2, and I'm going to show you another trick that you can do. If I go 1 and 2, well, you can see if I highlight those, you see there's a little box at the bottom there. See the little square box there? And if I drag that down, I click on it and I pull down, you can see that's going to auto-fill in all of those values for me. Now, I only had 4, so I'm just going to take this one to the bottom and I'm going to delete them, just hitting delete. You can hit backspace as well. Now, the thing is, maybe I want to put a heading in each of these columns, just so I know what this means. So one thing I can do is I could either grab these like I showed you before and just drag them down. Or if they were here before, I can highlight this whole row. I can right click here and click insert. And what we see is it inserted a row there for me. And now I can type in individual. And I can type in here chips. Right. Now imagine I just realized that it wasn't 78. It was 77 chips that this person had eaten. Well, what I can do is I can click on it and just type in 77 instead. But if it was, say, some number that was really long, and I got just one of these different numbers wrong, well, what you can see is if I click on that and I start typing again, it will overwrite everything. But what if I just wanted to overwrite one of those numbers? It should have been 565. 657, not 67 here. Well, what happens is if I click on a cell, I'm on that cell. But if I double click, so if I click onto that cell and again double click it, now you can see that I have a cursor that I can move inside that cell. Another way I can do that, and I can hit delete and I can change that number within it. The other thing I could do is click on that cell and go up into the formula bar. So we can see whatever cell I'm on, it's reflected up in this bar at the top. So 2 is up there. I click on this one and you see 23. Click on this one, it's 55657. And remember, I want it to be 77 chips, not 78. Okay. So now we've got columns, we've got rows, we've got cells. I can move stuff around and I can edit the values that are in each of these cells. Okay, that's pretty interesting. And we know that each of these cells has a name. So this one that I'm on currently is B3. So what's interesting about Excel is now we can do little formulas. For example, if I went into this cell and I wanted to know what individual 3 and 4 ate together, well, I could say equals 77 plus 32. Enter. And what we can see is, oh, that adds it up to 109. In the formula bar, we can see the formula, but in the cell, it's got our result. Now, that's all fine. I mean, it's a lot of manual work to do it that way. So what I could do is I could say, instead of equals 77 plus 32, I want this to be equal to B4 and plus B5. What we can see is it gives us the same value. And what it's done is if I double click now, it shows me that it's B4 and B5, and it highlights those two cells as the ones that I've added together. Now, a lot of the time when you're putting in Excel, you want to add parentheses around these. And a lot of the time, this is because we make complex calculations and we need to tell Excel which to do in which order. And as we remember from math in maybe grade 10, 11, something like that, there's an order of operations. And the parentheses will just allow us to enforce that order of operations that we do. Okay, so now I've got B4 and B5. Great. But it can be a little bit even more powerful than that. So there's a lot of formulas that we can have in here, and I could do things like ask it for the sum of all of these. And that's easy. I could go equals sum, and then I hit parentheses, and it shows me here, what do you want to sum? It gives me a little idea of what I'm supposed to be doing. So I want to sum that, and then I'm going to drag this down to there. Right? Now I could have put those in manually. Go equals sum B2, and then the colon means through B5, and close parentheses, enter. That gives me 144. I double click on that and we can see that. As you saw, the other way I could do that is by clicking on here and saying equals sum, and I just drag along the area that I want to sum, close the parentheses, and hit enter. I get 144. The last way you can do this, but it's prone to trouble sometimes, is you can go in this cell, and if we look up here, we've got this auto sum. I'm just going to click that. And what it's done is it's magically filled in what it thinks I want. And it's done that for me. So instead of doing that manually, it's done it, especially when it's in a really simple format like this, you can see that it's going to work quite easily. The last thing is that you're going to need to maybe save your files. Now, you can go into the File tab at the top. That will open up here, and we have Save, Save as PDF. We could either save, and that will save it, and it's going to ask us where we want to save it. We can browse for a place on this PC, it doesn't matter. But I want to save as in this case. Now, if I hit save, and it'll save wherever. I'm going to browse and maybe just save it to my desktop. And I'm going to call it Data 1. Save. Great. And now what we can see is that I've got a file on my desktop called Data 1. I'm also going to save this because this is going to be important when we get into using R and when we get into using JASP. Is I'm going to save as, and I'm going to go in again, browse, go to my desktop, and I'm going to call this Data 2. But instead of it, here it says Save As Type. I'm going to hit that drop down, and I'm going to scroll down until it says CSV, and we're going to pick the MS-DOS variety of that. So CSV, that one there, and I'm going to hit Save. Now, I'm going to close our Excel file now. I'm going to show you what a CSV file is. CSV stands for comma separated values. Now, I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to open with Notepad so we can see what this file really looks like. If I open this up, we can see I have individual chips, 1, 12, 2, 23. And what we see is that my columns are separated by a comma, and my rows are separated by a carriage return or a return character. So an extra line. And then different programs know how to interpret this. This is a very common file format. It's called CSV. Okay, so that's all I'm going to talk about in terms of the Excel brief tutorial for today. I hope that helps you out.